All right. Hey, good morning. It's Wednesday and going to be a great day. Got some good weather going on and all that kind of stuff. It's just good, right? So last night we went and watched some basketball. It's the beginning of the area tourney, which sets things up for who gets to go to the state. And so we were watching Appalachian, and they were playing Jefferson Christian. And man, it's just we won, which is always a good thing. But we sat behind the Jefferson Christian bench and just watched the coach and the players. And man, it's just Tammy and I were talking about this morning. Just heartwarming, really. Their coach is a good man. You can tell by the way he just reacts to his players and all of that. And they were good little athletes, trying to figure out how to play together as a team. But they were good little athletes and kind to each other. It was good. It was just a good night watching basketball. And just seeing that, man, kids are fragile. And there was this one little kid that got in at the game very late on their team. And I think I watched him for the last 5 minutes of the game. Just, he doesn't get in much, you can tell. And my heart just goes out to kids like that. And it's just good. Sometimes just to sit back and kind of observe what's going on. I don't know why I'm telling you that, other than that it just struck me yesterday. Just about how much is needed for people to pour their lives into kids that are good and noble people, and to just be an anchor for kids, and I appreciate that about what I saw last night. So, hey, let's just jump into some truth today, and we flipped the page. We're in John 14. This is, and I told you yesterday, and I'm going to keep telling you, this is some of the, what we call in like entrepreneur world, man, this is gold, right? I mean, this is the stuff that Jesus is laying down here, truth bombs. These are powerful things that you and I should grab a hold of. He has taken his 11 and he is giving them his last few hours on this earth before the cross, to really just remind them of some key principles and important things. And some of it's sobering and honest, and it's just rich. And it's full of truth for you and me. And so I want us to find ourselves there. We come to a passage here that always kind of exciting in one sense. Without the context behind it, it still loses a little bit of its flavor. But this is the passage where Jesus says, hey, I'm going to prepare a place for you. Man, that's good stuff. But we hear that not in the context of which they're hearing that. And so I want us to kind of travel back in time to that upper room and everything that kind of preceded that. To get us there, I want you to feel the emotion that no doubt they felt as well. And so it's been an interesting week for them, right? I mean, they can see the hostility that's growing. They know of the threats of murder. They've seen Jesus escape being stoned and all of those things and walking through the crowd untouched. They've experienced all of that, and they've only seen the hostility heighten. They know that if they align themselves with Jesus, all the Pharisees have said, we're kicking you out of Judaism. You're done. You're out of here. So there's tension. It's political tension, and they feel it. And it's more than political. It's a religious hostility and conflict, the most brutal and wicked and evil kind. And so this is where they find themselves. But yet, in the midst of that, and just previous to that, Jesus has raised Lazarus from the dead. And so they've just been hanging out with Lazarus and Mary and Martha. They enter into the city. The city's all hyped up because Jesus is, they believe, the works that he's done. They obviously don't fully believe in him, but that's where they are. And they're, Hosanna, King of Kings, this is a day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. And there's that great triumphal entry. And they were all witness to the fact of how sovereign God was in that whole thing. And then there was the cleansing of the temple again. And there was the teaching in the temple. Once he had cleansed the temple, he began to teach. And there was great hostile interaction that was taking place there. John doesn't tell us this, but on his way out of that temple on that day, he looks at the Pharisees and gives them 7 woes and just condemns them. And then he says, I'll leave this house desolate, meaning it was his father's house. And he's going, now, hey, we're done here. He wrote the words Ichabod over it. And so they've all seen this. They see, man, there's this big chasm that's taking place. They also listen to him say, they're trying to kind of like, hey, man, isn't this gorgeous, though, this temple? And he says, I tell you what, man, it's going to all be torn down. It's all going to be torn down. It won't be long. So now they've heard that, okay, well, man, is he doing that? Or what's happening? And then he talked to them about prophecy, which they did not really get. Then they've set up for this night, Passover feast, and they're trying to put to rest all of those things, but there's a little bit of excitement in them, and they're arguing about who's the greatest, right? And so they're still kind of self-absorbed. They're like little kids, heading someplace that don't really know quite the gravity of it, and they're just, kicking around and tussling and everything else. They're heading to the funeral or whatever, but they don't know it. They don't know what's going on. This is kind of where the disciples are, but yet they're troubled inside because they see things going on. And they see a difference in Jesus. They see the troubledness on his face. They hear the solemnness of his voice. They see him get up and serve them all. In the middle of them hollering, who's the greatest, he just gets up, takes off his outer robe, straps on a towel, grabs the bowl, and begins to wash feet. And they're all like, man, this is crazy. Judas had to have felt just totally, maybe not. Who knows what goes on in the mind of him. But Peter's like, no, it's not happening. And Jesus said, man, you're clean, but your feet need to be washed, right? This is total cleansing here. I'm not saying you're not a believer. And then Peter's like, hey, just wash me all, right? And so there's that conversation. Then he speaks of betrayal. And Peter looks at at John and says, who's he talking about? And John asks him, and he says, the one whom I dip this bread will betray me. And he dips the bread and he hands it to Judas. But they're oblivious to all of that. And Satan had entered Judas's heart. And Jesus says, whatever you do, do quickly. Then Jesus says, having cleansed the room, right? Now let's have these conversations. And so he gives them a new commandment. He says, listen, boys, I need you to hear this. I no longer do I want you to love as you love. No longer do I want you to love your neighbor yourself. That's a self-love. That's a lesser love. You have seen what I have done over the course of 3 years. I've given you the most perfect picture of perfect love that you will ever find. So a new commandment I give to you. I want you to love one another as I'm now loving you. I want you to stop the silliness of who's better and the competition and all of that. I want you to lay all that aside. I want you to, in humility, focus on others. Regard them as more important than yourself. By that, all men, when they just see you loving each other, it's a wake-up call that, hey, I belong to Jesus. And so that was the command. Remember when we talked about that? And then he says, hey, now where I'm going, you can't follow. And they're like, well, Peter's like, Lord, I'm going with you anywhere. Hey, listen, I dropped the fishing business for you. I'm in. I'm all in. I'll follow you. I'll follow you wherever. I'll die for you. Jesus says, man, that rooster's going to crow, and you will have denied me 3 times by the morning. And so it's just gotten, odd. So where's he going? Death? Is that what they understood? Paradise? What did they understand? He says, you can't go where I'm going, but you will later. By that, does he mean death? You're going to die a martyr's death later, and you're going to come to me? Potentially. But because of what we're getting ready to look at now, I believe there's more to it than that. I believe he wants them to see the bigger picture. And I think this is important. I think it's important for several things because their heads are spinning. Get this, right? Their heads are in turmoil. Peter's just heard, and it's rocked his world when Jesus looks at him and says, hey, man, you're going to deny me 3 times before the morning. Don't act like you got this thing figured out. What's he saying? What I draw away from this is how important it is for you and me to keep the end game in mind. Paul did that. One thing I know, Forgetting what lies behind, I'm pressing forward toward that upward call. Man, I'm going for it. I just want to see Jesus. I want to be found worthy of him in that day. That's why their little mantra will soon be Maranatha, right? Jesus, Lord, come quickly. This is what's going on. So he starts off and he says this. He gives them a command. He gave them a command, an imperative. We call it a command, but it's an imperative. That means it's a direct order from the authority. So when he says, a new commandment I give to you, here's an imperative. You go love one another just like I love you. Don't do anything else. That's my command. Go love one another. When you do that, the whole world will know that you're mine. Now he says, don't be troubled. Stop it. That's the force of this text. Do not let your heart be troubled. Was Jesus troubled? Yes. But was it under control? Yes. He's troubled. Listen, we say this all the time. I have lots to think about, but I got nothing to worry about. That's exactly where that comes from. That's exactly what Jesus, was Jesus troubled at so much of that, what was going on near the end? Was he troubled at the grave of Lazarus? Was he troubled in spirit at Judas and all that was going on? Yes. Was he worried about it? No. Why? Because he knew that he was the resurrection. And he knew that the cross was what he was to bear. He knew those things. So it's troubling, but he's not in despair. He's not worried about anything. And this is what Jesus is wanting his 11 men to know. Don't let your heart be troubled. You believe in God. Now, that's an indicative. That's a statement that is fact. He's not. Yours may just say believe in God. That's not a complete understanding of the Greek. Believe in God can make it believe like he's saying, hey, I want you to believe in him now. But that's not it. He's simply saying you believe in God. He's stating a fact. He's stating a command. Don't let your heart be troubled. He's stating a fact. You already believe in God. And now he's giving them a second command. On the basis of the fact that you believe in God, believe in me. Trust me here. Because they've got to be thinking, man, is he it? This doesn't look anything like what at Triumphal Entry we kind of thought so, but now the wheels have fallen off, and somebody's in this room's betraying, and right? I mean, and he's going away. He's gonna die. What's happening? And he's just simply saying, believe me, trust me. This is so brilliant to me. Because he's forcing them to keep the end game in mind. Isn't that what we have to do in so many ways? We have to keep the end game in mind. I watched a little bit of a series this week because a friend of mine at dinner the other night was like, man, my favorite show is Alone. You know, it's where people are taken to some barren wilderness, given like 10 objects, and they have to survive for the last one standing. And so I just, skimmed through them and would watch while I was doing some paperwork and things like that. One of the things that struck me, though, was what motivated them the most wasn't the thrill of what was going on right there. It started out that way. But ultimately, it was the picture that they were able to carry of their family. Or it was a thought of days gone by when, man, I wish my dad were here to enjoy this because, this, that, and the other. But the one thing that kept driving them was the end game. I'm gonna stay here long enough to win the money for my family because I got things I want to do and I'm getting back. Now, that's a weak illustration in some sense. But what propelled them and kept them going was this end goal. That they just needed to survive another day because there was some good stuff that was going to happen at the end of this. They were going to see their family again. They were all determined. Some of them quit because they were afraid they were going to die and not. And then they all thought, I'm hanging in here for the money because that $500,000 could change my family's life and it could let me start a new business and all of those things, right? We live our life so much in the day-to-day grind that we can't raise our head to see the greatness of who God is, that we believe that Jesus can do exactly what he says he can do. And this is what I want us to understand. He's saying, look, you believe in the God of all comfort, don't you? Isn't that how God displayed himself? You believe in the God of all comfort, but believe in me. Things aren't falling apart here, man. They're falling together. My plan is coming true. The Father's plan, right, is coming true. Jesus saying, trust me, I'm sovereign king. Now, let's look at what he says, and in light of that, what's he going to tell them? Do not let your heart be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. Believe me. In my Father's house are many rooms. Now, your Bible may say mansions. Terrible, terrible understanding, interpretation of that word. It means rooms. It means it for several different reasons. Because God has a family, and you and I have all that are believers in Christ have been adopted into the family. I like to say we don't live in the bunkhouse. We live in the big house, right? This is who we are. We're a part of his family. When a man decided he was going to leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife and become one flesh, in the Jewish culture, he would go and he would find that wife. He would leave her. He would go to his father's house. He would create an addition on the house so that then he could bring his family and live there. And the house kept getting bigger and bigger, and generations would come and go, and it was there, right? This is what he's saying here. So in heaven, you don't get your own little mansion. It's not like, well, if I work hard, I'll have a little bigger mansion. No, stop. That's the same thing the disciples were doing, arguing about who the greatest is. We have a room built by Jesus to house us in the heavenly city. Heaven is I mean, man, it makes you want to go look at it, and we're not going to take the time. But heaven is referred to as a country, right? And across the River Jordan, and all of those things that we talk about. It's also seen as a city, and that's what it's seen in like Pilgrim's Progress and all those things. And the scriptures speak of that. It's a kingdom, right? I mean, this is what Bunyan wrote when he spoke of when he wrote his other book. And so you see those things. It's also referred to as paradise, right? But it's all of it is the Father's land, and he's got a house there, and you and I will dwell there with him. That's the end game. That's the end game. That's what keeps us going. That's what caused Stephen, when he was being stoned, to look into the heavens, and they parted, and he saw God on the throne and Jesus standing at the right hand of the Father. What was his end game? Heaven, baby. What was Paul's? Man, to depart from this world would be better. Could it be absent from the body, be present with the Lord? But I think because of you, I need to stay a little longer here. This is what they all looked forward to. Even Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Hey, listen, we're not bowing down to that king. That statue. Our God is able to deliver us. And even if he's not, we're not bowing down. Why? Because they knew there was something after this life. This is powerful truth. He says, if I go, he says, if it weren't so, I would have been honest with you. I would have told you, but I'm going to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare that place, I'm coming again to you, and I'm going to take you to be with me, so that where I am, you may be also. And then you got Thomas going, Lord, I don't know the way. What? I'm confused. Thomas was a doubter. Thomas was confused. He had no linchpins. No pins to hold on to, anchor pins that he could hold on to. He's just doubting guy. He's like, I don't know the way. Lord, we don't know where you're going. How do we know? I don't even know what you're talking about here. Jesus says, I told you, I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. We all want to get to the Father. You all believe in him. I'm the way. I'm that narrow path. Take up your cross. Deny yourself. Take up your cross and follow me. I am the truth. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to steal you. I'm not steal you away from somewhere else. I'm going to speak truth to you. You have a sin issue. You need to repent. You need to believe in me. And then he says, I'm life. You want life beyond this? I'm it. I'm your only hope. This is so powerful. This is the end game. In that city of gold, that with precious stones and gold is what that city's built of. It's never dark because he's going to be there, and he lights the place up. There's never thirst because that river flows from the throne of God. There's never a lack of something to eat because the fruit grows every month on that tree. This is where we're going. This is the end game, and there will be no sin there. And all of us, brothers and sisters, all there together. Jesus is simply saying, I am the life, abundant and free. Man, it's the boat all over again. Jesus is like, hey, why are you troubled? Keep your eyes on me, right? What was Peter's trouble? Started looking around. What's our trouble? We started looking around. Keep the end game in mind. It doesn't matter what the president says or what the government does or what this, that, or that, whatever, what China. None of that matters. We're okay because this ain't our home anyway. Man, Lord bless you guys. Can't wait to share more with you in the morning.